Hi, everyone, and welcome to Dear Rach and Soph. Sophie, how are you today?
Pretty well, Rach. How are you?
Good. I should have said maybe I'm Rachael Johns and this is Sophie Green. But
If people don't know by now, look, we can't help them. Really, it's in the
well, and it
description.
doesn't really matter because we're just having a chat. We're two writers, as we say, having a chat about things that are happening in the industry, things that people are questions people are asking us, and yeah, so yeah, doesn't really matter. But hopefully, if you are listening and you do like us, you'll maybe check us out.
Yeah. We write books too.
Yeah, I've written a few. My latest just came out last week, although it
It-
probably didn't. It probably didn't now because we are recording. We're recording a few ahead, so it'll be about a month probably since my last book came out when we released this. So yeah, my
In
book's
the
out
week we are
next year.
talking, it is the week of release 4, Outback Reunion,
It
which
is. I should hold up
you
the
should
the
absolutely.
cover of my new book. It's actually set in a small town that I have been writing in for years called Bunyip Bay. But the fun thing about this book is the circus comes to Bunyip Bay, and the main female character is a circus performer. And so, yeah, I had so much fun doing the research for circus stuff, but also writing the circus things. I think we've talked about before the importance of having fun in writing, because if we're not having fun, then probably the readers might not be having fun. Well, they're
Yeah.
not that you can always have fun while writing, right?
No, there are certain parts of it that are definitely not fun, as previously discussed. I'm not wild about the editorial process. Having said that, I have had initial very good feedback on my novel for next
Cute.
year. Yes,
Excellent.
big tick, big tick. So
Oh,
that's a weight off my shoulders, but
yeah.
there will be a structural report to come.
But,
So
but your publisher has read the first, like the draft.
yes, yep, and she was very pleased. So
Excellent.
yeah, I'm feeling alarmingly smug at this
Oh,
stage.
I love that. Well, I'm feeling a little bit smug too because I have been doing something which we're going to talk about today. I've been reading reviews of my books because in research for this podcast, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, my books are rated quite well. And you know what? The recent ones are rated much better than the earlier ones, which makes me really happy because
Mhm.
it makes me feel like sometimes when we're doing this. I just feel like, am I getting any better or am I actually getting worse? I
Mhm.
think it's
Yeah.
that whole thing we talked about before, like doubt and, imposter syndrome and everything. But the evidence from the readers say that I'm not getting worse. So that's made me happy
And
for
that's
that.
the only evidence that counts, really. And therefore, you should be loving yourself sick right about now for all of these good
But,
reviews.
instead of reading the reviews and thinking about my past books, what I should be doing is focusing on the current book, which I need to write in the next few months. Hey, speaking of that, you obviously wrote this book that you've just written reasonably quickly because
Yeah.
you were planning on not having a book out next year.
Mhm.
And then this idea just came to you. It was one of those magic books, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that
Um,
respect.
yeah. So like how long in the end did it take you to write? Like, do you reckon like I mean, I know
Oh,
you're not writing full time ever either. So I'm just trying to encourage myself that I can do what I anyway, how long
three
did it
months. I reckon. I think it was 3 months.
and in that time you are definitely not writing, solidly for like hours a day.
One
Uh,
hour a day if I'm lucky.
yeah. And do you
Yeah.
do extra on the weekends? Or it's still
I did. So I particularly do it as the deadline looms, and that's not because I need the deadline. It's actually just that I feel that the more time the story has to marinate, the better. So therefore,
yeah.
I don't want to necessarily do a lot early on. I just want to
Yeah.
story time because there isn't a lot of time anyway. It's like
Yeah.
the longer I can let it sit in my brain and marinate, the better. I'll write what I can when I can, and then as the deadline approaches, it's like, okay, well now I am going to have to pull it out of the marinade
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get it down, knowing that there is an edit to come, there'll be structural edit to come, and then a copy edit. So there is still time to change things, but just in terms of the overall story, they do need time. Books,
Yeah, that makes me feel, good because I do feel like I've almost at 20,000 words and that's happened mostly in October. It has been a busy month.
You've had a lot on this month, the past few weeks, yeah. You've
Yeah, I've had
doing a
some
lot.
travel. I've had
Yeah.
like kid stuff on. I've been to a couple of festivals this month, and yeah, just it feels like there's been a lot on, and then book release, which is always, even if I'm not doing many events, but it's just. you know what it's like when you have a book out. There's more stuff online to respond to and all that.
What I would
Okay.
what I would really encourage you to do, Rach, is not chastise yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to. That's my big thing now. You know, I've got my Trust the Magic tattoo. I'm thinking of getting Be Kind on the other on the other arm.
But would you apply it to yourself?
Yeah, well, I have been a lot kinder to myself since my, you know, I think we've talked about it before on the podcast a couple of years ago when I really, you know, struggled to write a book. And that's why I mentioned fun before, and why I look for things that I can really enjoy and have fun with in each book. Because, like, yeah, I know if I'm beating myself up for not writing 2,000 words a day or not being at where I wanted to be in word count by now, then it's not actually going to make anything better.
It is counterproductive. In fact, it's negative to the process, because you're expending energy beating yourself up internally when you could actually just decide that, all right, well, my brain needs a break. Clearly, that's why I'm not writing at this point in time. So I'm just
and that's what I do. And I think I'm quite a bit slower than I used to be. But maybe I was thinking maybe it's in the earlier stages because I am really getting to know the characters. But interestingly enough, like when we're talking about looking back over a career of books, I was a lot faster in the beginning. I wish I'd kept better records, but I think I probably spent more time in the editing. Well, not necessarily more time, but the editing was probably different. It was a lot more probably bigger picture, and, you know, rather than just deepening storylines and stuff, where now I sort of I've spent, you know, a month on the first 5 chapters, really trying to make sure I'm happy with each chapter. And that's what's the word you said? Not counterintuitive, something else. Well, no, you know, like a lot of writing books and stuff, even Stephen King, which we've talked about before, or authors you see online will say, just get the first draft down, you know, don't, you know.
And that works for them.
Exactly. So it just shows again that everything is different and the process changes over the years.
It does. I think you and I both decided we spend more time in planning now than we ever used to. And
or thinking, at least for me.
And that is probably a function of just the longer we go, the more we realize that it's useful to do that planning. Not we've slowed down or anything like that because we're writing more books. We know ourselves better as writers. You've written a lot more books than I have, so it's just getting familiar with what works for you. Also, as life is changing and the things that are demanding your time are changing, you work out what you need to do, and it will be different from book to book. There'll be, you know, I might write a book that I'm going to bang out, you know, and without too much planning. I doubt it. I really doubt. I really like it now, but
you like the planning. They give you sort of a safety net that you feel like what do you like about the planning?
I like the process. I like the process of spending time with the characters before I start writing. So just sort of sitting down and going, okay, well, who are these people, and
I think that character work is really important.
And so I enjoy that part of it, and I don't know that I would enjoy trying to write my way into who those characters are.
Whereas I do a little bit more of that, I think, than you. And I'm like, that's why I think I used to read quite fast in the beginnings, but now I feel like I'm really getting to know the characters in those first few chapters as I write. So
I should also say, it's not that I don't get to know them. I do get to know them as I'm writing. It's more that
so things change or whatever. You realize. Anyway, we're not talking about writing process or character stuff today, although I'm sure we might pick the brains of our very fabulous guest a little bit to see what her writing process is, and things about character. Who knows where we'll go, because we always often go on tangents, right?
Look, and that's the nature of conversation. I should say though, just in terms of something that popped into my mind while you were talking about deadlines and whatnot, I have never ever interviewed a songwriter who has been worried about a studio deadline. They sometimes will go into the studio with songs half-baked. They don't appear to be worried about it. They just trust it's going to happen. So them going into the studio with the songs half-baked is like us going into an editorial process knowing that the draft is not quite where we want it to be.
Which is true, and that's what I try to remind myself, hey, as I'm writing, like, this doesn't have to be perfect. So sometimes that is a case of like not really, you know, knowing when to change and tweak and fiddle, and when to push on, because what I think is not great might actually be okay, and then my publisher might find something else that I've, you know, and so you just got to get that first draft down in some way, in some format. So Yeah. Anyway, I'm always happy to have some Sophie therapy, but today we are not talking about that. We're going to talk about book reviews.
Yes, we
And
are.
we brought someone on very special to discuss book reviews with us. Is she here yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So therefore,
Okay.
you can just tell us who it is, and then I'll put us on pause, and through the magic of the Zooms, we'll read.
Okay. Well, today's guest is, I might even read her bio before she's here, you know. Today's guest is the fabulous Sally Hepworth. And if you haven't heard of Sally Hepworth, it's a bit like we said a few years ago, I think a few months ago, if you haven't heard of Marian Keyes, if you're an Australian reader or writer particularly, but she's also very popular overseas. Sally Hepworth is the New York Times bestselling author of 9 novels. Her most recent is The Darling Girls, and I think I've just seen that it is being picked up by Bruna Papadea to make into a TV series. And Sally's novels have been called all sorts of things, but I like this one, darkly charming. And I wasn't saying that Sally is darkly charming herself because she's not very dark, but she's very charming. So I think that that's a good description for Sally as well. She's been praised by some big names. Her favourites are Emily Griffin and Leanne Moriarty as totally absorbing and fiction at its finest. And you can find Sally's novels pretty much everywhere. I was in Big W the other day, you know, visiting my book, saying hello as you do to a new release. And I noticed that, you know, every single one of Sally's books are there. So there are also the bookshops around Australia. You'll be able to find Sally's books anywhere. She's sold over 2 million books worldwide. I bet more by now because this is possibly a bio that's a little bit out of date. And Sally lives in Melbourne with her 3 gorgeous children and an adorable dog called Hannah. And the reason we are going to talk to Sally today is because Sally, if you're not following Sally's Instagram, well, I'm surprised basically because it feels like every reader in Australia is following Sally's Instagram. But occasionally she reads her 1-star reviews, and that was very, very popular. And I actually have a story about how that started, but I don't know if I should wait for Sally for that.
Well, you can if you like. So I'll put us on pause, and we'll see you after the job.
Okay. Woohoo! I'm so excited that Sally Hepworth is here. I've already raved about you, Sally, on our whatever recording thing. See, I'm so professional.
That's very kind. We don't need professional here today. I think
No, we were recording on a Sunday.
Yeah,
well.
we're recording on a Sunday. I forgot. I'm sitting here and, you know, without any makeup on. Like, I think this is a real conversation. That's
Hey, well, I have a tiny bit of makeup on, but I never look like I've got makeup on, and you look like you've got makeup on even when you don't. So, you know. Anyway,
That's
Sally,
Sally is very photogenic. We've already covered that before we started recording. Yes.
But today we are not going to talk about Sally's photogenicness. Is that even a word? Photogenicness?
It is
Probably.
now.
I like it. Anyway, we're going to talk about something super, well, I think it's fun. I think Sally thinks it's fun. And Sophie, I'll let her talk about her experiences about book reviews. So that dark place sometimes that authors go called Goodreads or Amazon, where I think you have to be in a certain frame of mind to go there. And it can be interesting reading your own book reviews, but I know some authors do and some don't. Sally, you definitely read your own book reviews, don't you?
I do. I love reading them. I mean, particularly in the few months immediately following a release. I don't go back and trawl through the old ones really.
Same.
I find them funny, and I thought about it so many times because it doesn't seem to be the norm. Like a lot of people are really hurt by it, and I don't feel that. Recently, someone said that they thought that I had this thick skin because, you know, at this point I have sold quite a lot of books, and so maybe that steels you against it. And that's a good point, but I don't think it's that. I've always felt this way.
And there's other authors who have sold loads of books who hate them, don't they?
Well, that's a good point. At both ways, you know, I think most people would understand a very new author getting their first bad review and finding that difficult.
Yeah.
But you're right. The other way is true too. Lots of people who sold books, you know, find them hard. I think it is purely the fact that my family of origin, my mum and dad and my brothers, we were raised on a steady diet of you're not special.
Yeah.
Whilst and humor, like everything
Yeah.
was potential, and so it was a loving family, to be clear, but we laughed at each other and ourselves as sport. And so
Yeah.
and
I love
and
that.
it the knock-on effect of that is that you don't feel as hurt by
Yeah.
things like that. It's sort of not personal. It was just understood that bad stuff happens to everyone, and that's an opportunity that we have to share and laugh. And so
Yeah.
I do think the more I've kind of thought about it, that's what it is. I know I don't come at it with a belief that my books are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I come at it with a belief that some people will enjoy my books. I now am at the point where I can say some people like them.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Um,
so true. And some people, and it's like we don't like every book we read, do you? Like,
no.
yeah,
Some people won't. That's my dog snoring. Sorry.
that's all good. Mine's
Uh,
under the desk here.
nice background. If she gets too loud, I'll tell
I
her.
mentioned her in the bio, in your
Did
bio.
you?
Yes.
Good. This is Hannah.
Mhm.
Some people, yeah, I don't find them hurtful. I find them funny, and I don't also look at them as an opportunity to learn, because the ones that I read um that
Interesting. That
are
was one of my questions.
negative
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
usually not very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is a shit book. I hated it. Um,
I know.
you know, this
You're like,
author
well,
needs
thanks.
to go and jump in a river. You know, I'm not
Yeah.
going to take that advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I'm
just,
glad.
I see it as part of it. You know, I
Mm,
see it as this is part of what we do. Some people don't like them. Have a laugh,
that's
move
so
on.
true.
If all of your reviews were dreadful and like that, maybe you'd have to start paying attention. But
Yes.
the more
That's a
books you
very good
sell,
point.
the more bad
Yeah.
reviews you get.
That's true as well. And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, even you, like, you've got sold a lot of books, but the majority of your reviews are good, right? And I think that it's very easy in life to focus on the, you know, the negative feedback we get rather than the compliments. Like, that's just not books. But, you know, if someone says you look nice, you think, oh, thanks, and then you forget about it, you know,
Yes.
2 minutes later. But if someone goes, you're looking very tired today, then that's basically a way of saying you look shit today, right? And then you're thinking constantly, you know, about it. So it's, I
Yeah.
think it's the same with reviews. It could be easy to focus on those. I try and remind myself now, like, because I must be, I don't think I've got as tough a skin as you. I think I'm pretty close.
Yeah.
And I think, unlike you, it's not necessarily because I grew up in a family like that, because I just had a single mum and she wasn't, you know, hugely humorous, and like, you know, there was no one to fight and, you know,
Yeah.
banter about with. But I took 15 years to get published, and I had a lot of rejections in that time. And I think rejections kind of prepare you a bit for reviews.
That thickens the skin, doesn't it? The rejection.
Yeah. And do
Yeah.
you think, because you had a few rejections, did you? Like,
A few hundred. Yeah.
yeah, okay. I try to remember. I'm like, you know, I thought, yeah. So we both had rejections.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, show me an author that hasn't on the journey to
Or
get
even
an
after.
agent, to get a publishing deal, and then, you know, down the road again, like you think that you've made it when you get a
Yep.
publishing contract, then, you know, your book doesn't sell as well, or then you
Yep.
can't get another one, or then in my case, I wrote a whole book that was
Yes,
rejected.
I remember that. Yeah.
Rejection. That was
And was
stressful.
that worse? Was that worse than the bad reviews?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Because the bad reviews, when you think about it, are meaningless. I mean,
Yeah.
it means one person didn't enjoy your book, so what? But
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
a book rejected by your publisher, that's a year of income. That's
Yeah.
something that you've poured your life and your heart and soul
I'm still
into.
dark for you on that, because I still reckon I want to read that book.
Also, Sally, I'm curious, was it rejected because the storyline wasn't what they were expecting, or was it just that they were like, well, could do better, D- sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think it was a combination of being the content of the book was a little bit more risque. It was a book about a swingers party.
Which now so many people have put books out about swingers parties.
I
And
know.
that's why I get very cranky for you, because I'm
Thank you. But the other part of it is, if I'm really honest with myself, it wasn't good enough. And I have read some other books about swingers parties too. And they're really good. My book hadn't distilled to what it was actually about. And if I could have had a few more goes at it, I might have got there, but it may not have changed the fact that it wasn't the right
Book
topic
at the
for
right
me.
time. Yeah, that's
Got
really
it.
interesting. Yeah.
One thing I do want to say about, I was just thinking about reviews and whether they hurt me. I think if I had a review that said something that was so opposite of what I stand for, like something that's really
Oh,
important to me. For example, there was one review that I did feel terrible about, which was written by someone who was really offended by a description I had had about an African American
okay.
character, and and what I wrote was absolutely offensive, and I didn't realize, and I I needed to do better. That one, yeah, that I felt terrible about that. And similarly, if someone wrote a review saying that I had, not represented women, appropriately, or kind of perpetuated a trope that was damaging, those
Yep.
kind of things absolutely would, a review like that, I would think about, I would try and learn from, and I would
Yeah.
take that away. The fickle kind of, even the ones about me personally that people will say, reviews shouldn't be about the author.
Yeah. How
Some people
ridiculous.
say, well, I think she's ugly, or, I think she's bald, or whatever, okay, I don't care about that.
Yeah, you're not important to me.
I don't care. Don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah, no, I
That's
think that's a
something
very valid point. And as authors these days, like, we continually have to learn. I mean, because the way we view things in life, we're learning that we've done it wrong in the past and we need to do better. But
Yeah.
when you've had a few books out for a while, like you had books out in the beginning too, I sometimes think some of my earlier books, some of the things I said in there, probably like nothing really, out there, but just the way, say, a male character may have spoken about a female character, or we didn't know as good as, like we have to do better each time when we're learning. I can't even say what I'm trying to say, but
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and I think we have to learn. We also don't need to beat ourselves up, I don't
yes,
think, because it was a different time.
yeah,
And, we have written a lot of books over a long period of time.
yeah,
And sometimes, I mean, certainly the comment I got, I should have done better, and I should have known better. But if we're looking at our first book compared to now, that's a
yeah.
moment in time. And that's why I kind of, this is a slight segue,
It's all
but
good.
I've thought of,
We got lost on tangent.
well, it's sort of related, but I love talking about this stuff with other book
Yeah,
people. We talked about this at the Whitsunday Writers Festival, about whether or not, for example, the Roald Dahl books were, they
yeah.
were re-edited,
Enid
and
Blyton as
Enid
well.
Blyton has been. Do we want to do that? And while I'm not going to go, no, we don't, I
Yeah,
do worry about what we're left with if we
same.
are editing, like books are a moment in time.
100%. I
And
agree.
and don't we learn from looking back at a book written in the 50s as compared to now?
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
want me to take my dog out?
No, didn't even hear
Okay.
that. I can't hear it. She's fine. No, you're
Don't
100% right.
don't we
Yeah,
learn back to go, look, wow, in this book, it was, completely normal for a husband to, I don't know, slap his wife or something.
yeah.
And or it was accepted, or that's the magic of books.
Yeah, I
And
100% agree. Yeah.
I hope I'm ashamed of things I've written in 20 years'
Mm.
time in books, but
Yeah, that's a good point too. But you've got to do what you like. You can only do the best you can at the time, you're writing. No, I completely agree. Read the re-editing of past books, because I think, yeah, we like our kids, especially in kids' books, can learn. They're where, conversations you can have when they go, oh, why was that person described like that, or whatever? That's terrible, and they are shocked probably. And then we
yes.
can say how far that. I mean, we've got a long way to come in a lot of places, but we've also come a fair way. And yeah, I agree. Like books are history, right? Fiction books are history just as much as nonfiction. Sophie, how do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think they should be rewritten, because partly I think it's about treating adults like children, and treating
Yes.
children like younger children. It's like, it's not trusting people to make up their own minds about something. It's basically saying, it's still a bit paternalistic, actually. It's like, we're going to tell you how to think here. We don't trust you to recognize that this book was written at a certain time and has different ways of doing things. We're going to tell you how things should be now, so that we can control how you think. And I'm quite serious about that. I do think it's who gets to decide how that should be re-edited? It's a group of people saying, this is how we think that book should be rewritten. Okay, you're deciding. So you're deciding for the author who is now deceased in Roald Dahl's case. And on behalf of his estate, they've agreed to it, whatever. Who's deciding how that should be rewritten? For whom is it being rewritten? Which groups in society is it being rewritten? Because partly I think it's performative, and I'm speaking as a publisher as well as an author. It's like, partly I think that is performative. It's like, look at us. We're doing the correct thing now. We're putting out these books. And so in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, are they going to be yeah. So it's also just trust adults to have adult thinking and let them make up their own minds about
and
things.
parents, I suppose,
If they don't want to read them, don't read them. That's the other thing. Read them.
That just made me think though, do we, and I'm pontificating because you brought up a really good point about adults. When it's a children's book, which in the case of Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton, is there a place to even have a foreword, for example, rather than changing it and say, hi kids, this is Billy from, Roald Dahl's great-grandson. I've read this book and I think there's a few things in here that might be different.
Would be amazing.
As a kind of approach, this is how it is, it stands as it is. But children, in my mind, and I hadn't thought about this until you said that, adults, yes, children may be just something to tip them off, because certainly in the cases where books resurge in a big way and suddenly this is something that a whole lot of people are reading without context.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know.
There might not. I always think about, we'll get back to the fun review stuff in a minute because I've got some, stalkish questions. But that's a really good point, because I would think, oh, well, I would discuss that with my children, but then not all kids have someone who is going to discuss with them that what they're reading is not, the way we would talk or do things now. So I love that idea. Yeah.
But they are getting those books in libraries and bookshops. And so usually there are adult intermediaries between children and those books. So if the adult intermediaries really feel that the children shouldn't have the original Roald Dahl, don't have it on the shelf where they can find it, whether that's at home, in the bookshop, in the library. That kids may find their way to them eventually, because that's the nature of kids, is they'll ferret things out when they're really, really curious about them. But yeah, I don't know. I do trust children as well. I think children are really astute about so many things. But the forward, Sally, I do think is a great idea. That's like any novel that gets reissued for adults. Even it might be from like The Group by Mary McCarthy from years ago. I think has a forward by Candace Bushnell. It's like, times have changed, but this is
I love that idea.
I think that might be a good middleman, because Sophie, it's funny, I'm thinking as a crap mum, inverted commas, who pushes reading like a drug, to my children, and have thrust, Roald Dahl into their hands. Like my kids love The Witches. I think kids love to be scared.
Great book.
I may do that feeling like I'm the best mum in the world, and not think about the fact that there's some really dodgy stuff in there that I haven't reread it before handing it to them, and that's not top of mind. So that might be the piece where, while we trust children and adults, maybe it's just something that could catch them. But as I said, this is a really new thought to me, so I'm not sure.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. And as Sophie said, it happens in so many adult fiction books. So why not do it for children? I mean, I don't know, maybe they do, because I've now got a 16-year-old, 18-year-old and 20-year-old. So I'm not like looking at middle grade and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's something they do. Okay, well, we've gone a little bit off topic, but let's try and get back to it, because I think one of the things, I know you read your 1-star reviews for many years on Instagram, and it was like such a fun sort of little series, and people loved it and shared them. And I think a bad review shared is always like, so I remember it started I think this is where it came from. Quite a few years ago, you, me and Lisa Ireland did a few events in Western Australia, and one of the things we decided to do at the very end, I think, was read our very worst review out. Wasn't
that fun? People loved it.
It was so fun. And I think that's the thing, like I'll admit, I have been through dark, times in my writing where I have, like, reviews are more likely to not damage me, but they're more likely to, I think the last few years, I've just sort of I've adopted sort of your attitude. But there was a time when I was feeling quite burnt out, anxious, and so I think when your emotional state can reflect, you know, how you feel about reading a review. But then reading our bad reviews with each other and, you know, in an audience, it was like therapy almost,
I
right?
think it was a microcosm of what growing up in my family was like. You know, we got together around the dinner table, not formally, but we would tell funny stories about things that happened in our day. And it wasn't, I got A+ on a maths test. It's I fell over in front of the whole
And
class.
everyone,
Someone ate my lunch, you know, and we would laugh. And so I think it's healing, and it releases shame, doesn't it?
So can you tell us, I mean, whenever anyone asks me about like what's your worst review, I say, oh, well, I've got some. I mean, one for the Patterson Girls was, I remember it said something like, this book must have been written on pregnancy hormones or something. Right? And, you know, we'll talk about in a minute quickly, like whether you should respond to bad reviews or not. And I'd say in general, no. And I didn't respond. But I really wanted to say, I haven't been pregnant or even breastfeeding for like 5 and 7 years. So no, it was not written on breastfeeding.
Stuck on that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now your review that you shared, which I'm sure you'll remember what it is the best bad review I've ever heard. So can you mind sharing it with everyone?
There's two, so I'm not sure which one it was, but
okay.
I'll tell you.
I might get another one.
I think my favorite is the one that said, and it was I think it was from one of my very early books, and it said, before I read this book.
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Before I remember it by heart.
I know, I do as well, almost.
Before I read this book, I didn't know what I was put on this earth for. I was wandering around, living my life and wondering, what am I doing here? But after reading this book, I now understand that my life's purpose is to tell other people never to read this book.
The best.
And
you
I
should
just
get that framed and put it on your wall.
I should. It was on my fridge for a long time. I've moved house since then. But I gave someone purpose. I mean, I don't think many people can say that. So that one, I was overjoyed, and it was hard to beat. There was another one that was a real.
Hang on, before you say the other one, can I say, so when I've mentioned that to someone, because people are, they've said, that's a great, you should pull that out for a cover quote. You know, like, before I read this book, I didn't know my purpose in life. You know what I mean?
And just cut it off there.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazon reviewer, Beverly.
Exactly. Anyway, what was the second one?
I think her name was Rhonda, actually. That one.
Have you killed off a Rhonda in a book?
But yeah, I think I've had one actually. Rhonda. I would be friends with Rhonda. Like, she had a good way with words. But so the other one said, and there was a lot of other stuff about how they particularly didn't like, it was about the family next door, and it went on about the women and how they were whiny, miserable old bitches or something. And it was all, this book was all set by the seaside, and so talked about that and women and all the things that were wrong with it. And then the final line was, I just wish all these women would be swept out to sea and stung by jellyfish.
I do appreciate a review like that, the one that's really well written. And you know, that's why it's Sophie, because you don't read your reviews, right?
I do not.
You're missing out on this. You're missing out.
You can just search them by 1 star. So if you just go 1 and get the 1 stars, then you don't have to worry about the dreadful 3-star ones. They're the ones.
Okay, Sophie, hold that thought, because let's talk about that, because I had ratings here. Right. So as an author, this is my rating system, I think, right?
Yeah.
If someone gives me a 5-star, I'm like, fabulous. That's good.
We love them.
4-star, it's
pretty good. No, I'm happy with the 4.
Okay, you know, 3, I may as well jump off a cliff. 2, Sophie's like, what? 2 is like just terrible. 1 is, you know, funny.
Amazing. Top of the list. Almost
but the 3s are the worst, right? Because especially the 3s when they say, I really enjoyed this book. 3 stars.
Oh, actually, I would say across the board, if it's anything but a 5 and they say, I thought this book was great, that's annoying.
If you loved it so much, why didn't you give me that extra star? Yeah. See, Sophie, obviously we spend far too much time thinking about reviews, good and the bad. But yeah, like, so but I've talked to book reviewers, and you know, I've got a really good friend who has a book reviewing blog, and to her, 3 is pretty good. You know, like, because that
Bell curve.
Goodreads rating or something is like 5 was amazing, 4 was good. Like, no, I think it's 3 was good or something. I should try and look it up quickly. But for an author, I don't think 3 stars is a good. I don't want it.
It's another reason why not to take reviews that seriously, because
Yes.
there's
Subjective.
no metric that
No.
everyone has to use, really. Like, it's our
Yeah.
own, it's very amorphous, you know.
Yeah,
And
that's so true. It's very subjective. I've just seen it says Goodreads rating is 5 stars is amazing, 4 stars
Oh.
is really good, and 3 stars good. You know,
Mm.
so and it's like, no, I feel like I'm at school. If I got a C, I wouldn't have been happy. I mean, like, I would have proved that would have been annoying because I didn't work hard enough that I got a C.
Yeah.
I didn't put enough effort in, but I still would have been annoyed, right?
It's true. It feels like 5 is a, you know, well done.
A,
A
yeah.
4 is a needs improvement, isn't it?
Yes, there's room to improve in a 4.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I actually don't think, I tend to think, not that I actually read reviews, but in thinking about them, because again, it's so subjective. A 4, I think reviewers on Apple Books, on Goodreads, all sorts of things, it's their own system, right? So they might have
Yeah.
loved your book,
Yep.
but they maybe didn't love it as much as another favorite book. So they're going to give it 4 stars because it's not
Exactly.
their 5 star, they've got their 5-star reads that they love and adore. Now, that's nothing to do with the quality of the book. It's just their personal rating system of what they like and don't like.
Correct.
And a 4 star is probably better for, like, if someone like that gives you a 4 star, it's probably better than someone who rates almost every single book they read 5 stars.
Someone might give A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara 5 stars and rate Sally Hepworth 4 stars. Now, in my book, every Sally Hepworth is going to be a 5 stars over and above A Little Life, because A Little Life makes me want to jump off a cliff and never come back. Like, so it's that, you know what I mean? But if someone really wants the torture porn that is A Little Life,
Torture porn, I love that.
or what you write, Rach, that's never going to get 5 stars for them.
Yeah. So, Sophie, I'm pretty sure you don't do this, but I think Sally might, and I shamefully do. So if someone gives me like a 1, or maybe not, if let's say a 3 star, right?
Yeah.
Then I will click on their profile, you know, and see. Have you done that? I'll click on their profile and see which other books they, you know, have rated like 1 star and 5 stars, and then they'll rate like some of my favorite books ever. Just, you know, they'll rate them like 2 stars, and then books that I've read and I thought that was utter crap. Like, I'm just gonna, you know, give that away. They'll rate them 5 stars, and that makes me feel a bit better because I'm like, well, clearly you don't have taste.
They've got no taste.
Yeah. So have you done that?
Do you know, I probably have. I haven't been.
Here's where I'm the most shameful. I stalk reviewers.
Look, I probably do. I have actually not been looking at reviews a lot overall lately because it has been a while since my last release. But it's definitely the kind of thing I would do. As I say, that early period when you're just getting reviews, then I'm most likely to go deep. And if there is something that you know, that feels really off, maybe I'll go check them out.
I think that's a tip for any authors out there who are, you know, unimpressed with the review. Check it out, because likely the reviewer didn't like books that you think are amazing. So
and also to the early authors, get off there. Like, if it does, like, not everyone is like me, and if you don't feel that, get off there. Like,
that's true.
Don't want to be in a position where you're accidentally responding to a review, because I think we're going to talk about that. Get off there. People love your books. Go love yourself.
And love the people that like, remember that there's a majority of people do like them, probably, and that those people are more important. Like, they're your readers, right? So the people that do love your books, they're the ones you should be worried about, rather than the people who don't. I know we're like running out of time, but
and Rach, you didn't actually ask me why I don't read reviews.
Well, that's what I was about to go back, and then I was going to ask. So why don't you read reviews?
Because I think other people's opinions of me are none of my business.
Oh, I like that.
And so therefore other people's opinions of my
Sally
work.
and I are more nosy. Anyway.
I was going to say petty. but nosy too. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Sophie. Yeah, okay.
So it's more, and also like I don't have time is one of the things, but
Yeah.
but I will read them when
I probably don't have time either.
Oh, definitely not.
when my books have been released. My publicist, the last couple of books, has organised an Instagram blog tour, and I have read those reviews because those people have very kindly agreed to be part of the blog tour, and I'm going to repost those reviews. So I like to see what they've written before I repost them. But that doesn't mean that everyone loves the book necessarily, but it's usually they're pretty favourable. But it's more that I just think, well, the work is out there. What someone thinks of it is not of my concern. I'm also really conscious that because I have my country music life, whenever I've reviewed an album or anything, I review it if I want to give it a positive review. I've never given anything a rating out of 5, like no stars, nothing like that. I just review what I'm listening to and what the experience is going to be for the listener to that. So yeah, it's just never been my thing to rate something like that.
Which is brings me to another question. As authors, do you think, I mean, we all ask for cover quotes and endorsements and stuff, and in some ways that is a review, and that's a whole other conversation about how we deal with that. But do you think authors, or as yourself as an author, do you review or rate books?
When I think to do it, yes.
Yeah.
Look,
Would you rate them? Do you rate? Because I feel like I have to give everyone I know 5 stars. Like,
look, I think that one, and it ties into what you were saying, Sophie, reviews, and this perhaps is also why I don't get offended by them. We need reviews, to be honest, as authors.
100%, yeah.
Because as soon as people are controlling what they write, they become useless to all of us. Like if or people are too afraid, reviewers are too afraid to give an honest review, then no one's going to pay attention to any of them, and that's our biggest marketing tool. And so and yes, it is a dangerous kind of murky world to be an author and then to be, not giving 5 stars to people. But I do believe that
we should all be mature and realize that
and they're our friends.
It's not personal. Yeah.
But there are a lot of books I read of authors that I don't know, and I would not necessarily give them 5 stars.
Yeah.
I equally would never slander another book
same.
because I'm an author. Reviewers, yes, go slander a book if that's you're building trust with your reader,
and it's funny sometimes. That's part of their brand.
And they can do what they want. Like it really, I know a lot of authors will get very, they should review the book, not the author, or they should do this or they should do that. I don't think we can tell them what they can do.
100% agree.
I mean, I'm certainly not saying it's okay to, say, the issue hate or anything on an author, but if you
don't tag them in a terrible way.
Don't tag them. But if you didn't like the book because you think that the author, was spouting Christian views and that's not what you like, you're allowed to say that as a reader, or you think that
why do I keep saying
too left wing or too right wing, they can say that. They're allowed. We don't get to control that. We need to grow up, put on our big girl pants and take what they say because that's the game.
I remember that's so true. Like if you're not going to be prepared for that, then maybe this is not the game for you.
That is more to the point, actually.
Yeah. Like if you're going to take it too personally, and also it's so much out of our control that the best thing we can always do is focus on the next book, right?
Correct.
It's easy to forget that sometimes, but I would say don't respond as a author to bad reviews, right?
Don't respond because it's not okay to invalidate what that person has said. And we know that reviewers, it takes an extraordinary amount of time for them to do what they do. They read
and they're not paid for it generally.
They're not paid. They have to read that book and they have to get a lot of books sent to them, presumably. They have to write that post. They have to, put it on their social media. It's valid. If that's their opinion, it's valid. And as an author, for us to again start attacking ones that we don't like, who do we think we are? They're allowed to not like our book.
And there's also what's known as the Barbara Streisand effect, which is, so Barbara Streisand a few years ago sued over, there was a photo of her house on a cliff in California that she was saying invaded her privacy and they shouldn't have done it. And she went to court over it. Now, at the time that she took it to court, about 4 people had seen that photo. But once she took it to court, tens of thousands of people saw that photo because
Yes.
everyone was like, oh, what's this lawsuit about? That's interesting. So her privacy had not been invaded, actually, to the extent she thought it was. But she then set up something which really invaded it. And so unless you're an author on social media who is deliberately going after a reviewer because you want to get the likes and you want to get the views and you're doing it for the algorithm, and even then it's not cool, but maybe that's why you're doing it. But otherwise, you're just only going to draw more attention to it.
That's
Exactly
true. Although
right.
saying that, I remember, I think it's the Dear Author. No, it's Smart Bitches Trashy Books, I think, which is a big sort of blog with mostly romance.
Best title for a website ever.
I know, it's great. And it is, that's exactly what it's about. That, you know, just because you read, I have a problem with the term trashy books anyway, but this is, again, a book, a title that this blog was started like 15 years ago, you know. So anyway, Smart Bitches Trashy Books, and they rate the books like A+, A-, and that could be Dear Author. But anyway, they bad, good reviews. They give it all, and they're honest, and they're well thought out. They're not personal. But I remember I can't remember her name now, but the person who owns that blog and who started it came to one of our romance writers conferences, and she said, a negative review usually gets more clicks through to the sales, because, you know, if someone says this book had too much sex, or I didn't like the violence, you know, someone else, that too much sex or violence is their jam, and they're like, I want that. So, you know, as authors, we definitely shouldn't take them personally, but also sometimes the bad reviews are what make people want to read the books. And I would say in your Instagram 1-star reviews, like, I'm sure that reading them out, you know, made more people go and buy your books probably than the people who wrote those bad reviews thought would happen when they wrote them.
That's true. I know. I think, well, it was a very popular series.
Exactly. You know, and a very clever
good for
series.
you, not for me. That's what we say about reviews.
Yeah. Anyway, I
Yeah.
have one last question. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but we're all very busy and have lots of important things to do, like write our next books. But Sophie, I want to ask you, because as a publisher, I know you're a nonfiction publisher, and I'm guessing reviews are slightly different in the nonfiction sphere than they are in the fiction sphere. But you talk to fiction publishers too, and you're in the industry. Do publishers actually care about our Goodreads and Amazon ratings?
Yes. No.
About Goodreads, no. So I will also say what I've tended to find over the years with reviews, at least in mainstream media, is that non-fiction reviews review the book and fiction reviews review the author. And that is a key distinction. I didn't actually run it down to see whether it was more female novelists who were being reviewed personally rather than male novelists. But I did find that books that when I was an agent in particular, I would look at the reviews and I would think the nonfiction books are being reviewed as books, and the author's credentials in relation to the book might be mentioned, but the novels, sometimes because they tended to be written by people who used to write novels and perhaps they wish they still wrote novels that got published, they reviewed the authors. And I used to think that was very unfair, because it was like, well, it's the work you're meant to be looking at, not the person themselves. It doesn't matter what that person's life is like, or whether they live in a particular suburb of Melbourne or whatever it is. That's irrelevant to whether or not the work in front of you has functioned as a novel to give a satisfying story or not. But anyway, as a publisher, look, also as a former bookseller. So when I was a bookseller years ago, even back then, so this was in the golden age probably of reviews, didn't really have much of an impact. We would know what was in the newspaper that day in case someone came in. But usually what people responded to was seeing the cover. So as publishers, we just want the cover in there, because if the cover is what people are going to respond to, they go, oh, it's that book. They might look at the contents, and I think it's also similar to the bad reviews leading to sales. They might see a bad review, but if the subject matter of that story or that nonfiction book is something they're interested in, they'll see the cover and they'll be like, great, I'll go to the bookshop or I'll go online and look for that, because I know that subject matter is of interest to me. And even then, I was in a very popular independent bookshop in Sydney. We had a lot of customers who read a lot. They tended to not bring in reviews and say, I saw it in the paper, or even mention that they'd seen something in the paper. They were far more likely to go off word of mouth and the bookseller's recommendation. So that was even then. But on terms of Amazon and Goodreads, no, like it's nice. And the authors get very excited about the Amazon rankings in particular. But then I say to them, well, Amazon does no merchandising. So you've got to think of that differently to Apple Books if you're just looking at ebooks. So Apple Books does merchandising, so they'll do the what to read this month, all those sorts of things. So the Amazon rankings can be manipulated by people who get all their mates to buy, or however
And
many.
algorithms that we don't understand.
Exactly. So no, it doesn't really cross my mind as a publisher to pay attention to that, because I think it's user generated content. Goodreads is owned by Amazon. This is all Amazon generating content to get search results.
And I guess in the end, the bottom line is the sales, right? So if someone has a terribly reviewed book, but it's sold hundreds of thousands of copies, that's going to influence you buying the next book.
The sales are the ultimate review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sales are the ultimate review. That's it. Well, I could literally talk to you, Sally, for hours about so much stuff. So thank you for taking the time.
I'm just getting warmed up.
I know, that's what I feel.
So in terms of your own writing, what's
that's what I was going to say.
Coming up?
Like, tell us what you're up to and what's next for you, because I know people are probably desperate to hear.
Well, this is what I was doing when I forgot to come on and do the podcast. I was sitting at my desk finishing the book that I'm about to send off to my publisher. It's exciting. I was meant to finish it on Friday, and then I worked out that, the time difference in America, and I messaged my publisher and she said, I'll just send it on Monday. And I was like, all right. And I can't decide if that was a good thing or not, because now it was kind of ready, but now I'm in that, really, minute looking at the words on the line and going,
yeah. You just need to push send, Sally. Hear it from us. Push send and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
I know.
That's my advice.
Well, I'm going to do that very soon, but so I'm a year behind. Last year I took the year off, and so I'm delivering in time as what I normally do. And this book will be out sometime next year. So
exciting.
Fingers crossed.
How are you feeling about it? Like as a story, how are you feeling in yourself about how it's gone?
I feel a bit nervous because it has been a bit of time since I last submitted a book. I was feeling fantastic about it. I was thinking, wow, this is the best book yet. I love the character that I've created. There's a very elderly lady called Elsie who's telling my story.
Anyway, I can imagine that's really special to you. Thinking about your great aunt Gwen.
My beautiful Gwen. It's been a really enjoyable character to create, and it has a flashback, and it's got very funny and very dark.
Is there murder?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking that it wasn't like, because before we came on, Sophie said she was reading one of your earlier books, and I'm like, it's quite different, isn't it, to the latest books? And we're like, yeah, and so I just wondered, but yeah,
it's funny because the premise of this book came out of a woman that I met called Rosalie, who was 93, and she came to one of my events.
I think I saw you talking about this.
Yeah, last year, and she came up to me. She waited right till the end, and she came up, and I'd of course been talking about murder and how that's what I write, and through the event. And she came up and she said, Sally, I think I'm going to murder my next door neighbor. And I said, oh, you should do it. And she said, yes, I think I will. And she said,
how would you say she was?
93.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're not going to have long in prison.
Of course you should do it, Rosalie. This is the time. And she said, I think I'll get away with it too. And I said, why is that? And because I thought she might have a good plot, like a good way. And she said, well, no one ever suspects old ladies of murder.
So true. I can't wait for this book.
She said, there are two groups of people that no one suspects of murder, and those groups are grannies and little girls.
Yeah.
And I thought, thank you, Rosalie. That's my next book.
That's amazing.
So it's about an elderly woman and a little girl and the murderous past that they
Oh my gosh.
Ooh, Sally.
I want to have it. Press send to me when you press your publisher as well. No, that sounds really good, and I think it'll have been worth the wait. So yeah, thank you for your time today, Sally, because I know you are very busy and you've got 3 kids as well who, on the weekend probably, want to spend time with you as well. So thank you very much. I could have talked all day.
I could too, and thank you for inviting me. This has just been a pleasure.
I think so, particularly on a day when you're delivering a manuscript. We're really
I'll always make time for Rach.
Oh, love you, Sally. All right. Thank you so much.
Like, I'd never met Sally before. What
Isn't
a
she
treasure.
lovely?
Oh,
She
she's
is.
yeah.
She
She's
really is a lovely person, a fabulous writer. And yeah, I could have spoken, I think both of us could have spoken to her for a lot longer. I would love to have asked her a little bit about her social media and stuff as well.
you have
But
to
that
get it
was,
back.
we might have to, maybe next year, next season. That was specifically on reviews because yeah, I know that she does read them and has some quite enjoyable ones. So have we changed your mind and reading your own reviews?
I still think other people's opinions of my books are none of my business.
And as you said, it's a time factor thing. I should have mentioned actually, but you know, we're of time. When Sally said to you, if you want, you can filter the 1-star reviews just so you can have some, you know, entertainment. You can also, I've learned now, because as I said, I'm more of a tough skin now than I was a few years ago, but having been through that sort of time where I was really emotionally tender regarding my writing, I'm a bit more careful about protecting that. So I know that like sometimes if I'm not in a great stage of my writing or I'm doubtful or whatever, that I should not go on Goodreads and have a look. But now I've also learnt that what Sally said too, like I just look at the rating overall. I don't necessarily read the reviews, and I'm very careful not to scan by accidentally see a really bad one. So what I will do is if I see the ratings are good, I'll filter to 5 stars so I can give myself a bit of a boost and read the good ones without seeing the bad ones.
Yeah.
So.
And that's, look, Rach, you can do whatever you like. That's the thing. You can read your reviews. I cannot read my reviews. It's the beauty of being an adult.
Exactly. Yep. And we can change our mind.
We can change our mind. Now, at the time we're recording, I think we're getting near the end of our recording for 2024. Who knows if we'll be back in 2025. If people do want us to continue, they can let us know in the comments. Because
send us topics you want us to speak about.
Send us topics, because yes, we can obviously go over old topics and we can have more guests and things, but we want to make sure that this is interesting and useful and entertaining for people. So tell us if you would like us to keep going. Tell us if there are subjects you'd like us to cover. Should we branch out from writing and just talk about life in general? Should we just turn it into a general chit-chat conversation podcast? There are so many possibilities, I guess. I don't know.
And we'd love to hear what you think. And if you do love us, don't forget, please leave a review, rate us. 5 stars only.
5 stars.
Well,
Rach,
thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Bye.